Greetings and salutations, board game fans. The Dice Pirates are back. This is episode 34. We're going to be diving into some two-player games. What makes them good? What do you want out of them? And what are some of our favorites? I, of course, am your captain, Ian, joined as always by Matt and Aaron. And we are honored today to be joined by Danielle. You are an Instagrammer. You, of course, are a board game Instagrammer, but you focus a lot on two-player games. We are thrilled to have you. Thank you for being willing to come on. Just kind of so, who are you? What's kind of your relationship with board games? Just tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And it's also really weird being called a board game Instagrammer because that's the platform I'm least active on. But I'm there. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
So yeah, board games. Weird evolution in my life. I was very heavily a video gamer, and I had the baggie of Magic the Gathering dangled in front of me, and here I am playing board games now. So it's kind of the old wives' tale of my board game history. So it's been about 10 years. 10 years of me playing board games. And
Another person lured down the alley by Wizards of the Coast.
they got me good. In my initial conversation when someone's like, hey, do you want to learn how to play Magic? And I was like, no.
No.
That's for nerds, as I was dressed up in a cosplay at PAX.
Cardboard
And I was like,
crack.
no,
That's for nerds. Says the woman who has a cloak for D&D.
I do.
Well, you took that step down nerdiness, and you're right. It was a slippery slope, and now you're here talking to board game podcasters on a weeknight. Congratulations.
Yeah. Hey, and this is what I live for now. This is what I'm
Yeah.
excited for.
Well, we do appreciate you coming on for sure. We're going to jump into our soapboxes. And Danny, I know you actually have one that you want to bring us. You want to talk about GAMA, I believe.
I do. So GAMA, I don't know if it's really a soapbox, but this is my experience with GAMA. So GAMA is a games and manufacturing expo. And initially it was meant for manufacturers, publishers, people that are already within the industry. And this is the first year that they invited media to the event. And they were very much media this, please come in, come look at all the stuff. They had a lot of events for us. They hosted a first look room for us where we can see a lot of the upcoming Kickstarters and games that are coming up for this year and even next year, stuff with super prototypes. They even set up a speed dating event for us where all the media got to sit down with a publisher one-on-one. We had 6 minutes. They would kind of not pitch their game. They weren't trying to sell us on the game, but they were trying to explain the game to us. And then we would pitch ourselves as media and content creators. What can we do for them? And it was really just a good business interaction outside of the normal cons where we would meet Gen Con and PAX, where there's just 1,000 people and you're sitting in a sea of a million people and distractions everywhere. And it was a very chill, relaxed time, and everyone was just there to do business on a very low-key level. It was one of the coolest things I've done recently, and I went in with zero expectations. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know what I was going to do, and there I was in Reno in a casino, and I was having lunch with people who would design these games that I've been playing for years, and it was very surreal, but it was also very valuable as far as growing my channel and growing what I do right now at this point, and just compounding on the relationships I've already made, because I hadn't met a majority of these people in the past 2 years in real life. It's just solely been internet interactions. So to be able to sit down with them and chat with them and face-to-face time, it was dope. The easiest way to put it. It was dope.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you, who were some of the people there that you met that you maybe knew from online that you had never gotten a chance to talk with in person before?
So in person, one of the biggest things was kind of their rep from Chip Theory. I'm a huge Chip Theory fan. Too Many Bones is one of my favorite games of all time. I've had so many good online interactions with them, but to sit down face to face and be able to am I allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, shoot the shit with people about real life things. It was very surreal. You get to know someone on a personal level, and I feel that makes your more professional level a little bit stronger. And the fact that you're able to interact with them and they still like you at the end of it, which is very encouraging. I'm trying to think. The folks from Leader, super cool. I found out they all played disc golf, and I'm like, hell yeah, like I'm there for that. Lots of F1 chat, that was exciting. I'm trying to think who else I got. The folks from BoardGameTables.com, so a lot of Kabuto Sumo talk and what's coming up with them, and just everyone was there. And then to like, you only see people in their icons online. And I'm like, I feel like on our lanyards we just need little pins of our icons so we know who they are. And it didn't help because everyone was wearing masks and hats, but it was really cool, and I will gladly go back every year.
That sounds really fun. We got to go to that. I'm jealous now. I want to go. We're big board game media, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fun fact, Danny, Ian and I have never met in real life.
Really?
That's true.
That's a true fact. Yeah.
That's some of the best relationships.
I'm the
though.
bridge. I'm the bridge friend, and I introduced them virtually, but we've not yet been able to connect because geography and COVID and all the other things. Our podcast basically emerged in the middle of COVID, so it's been like weird.
I feel like that happened with a lot of people. Do you guys have like plans to get together and meet and hang out?
One day.
Yeah, we're talking about doing that. We're gonna do a meetup, and the grand meeting of Ian and Aaron in person. The awkwardness is gonna be like so intense because I feel like there's gonna be a moment where they think about hugging and then they don't, and it'll be really like amazing to watch that like awkward interaction.
Or there's just such like a firm grasp of bodies with each other that it, like fireworks ignite between you two, and that's it. Like you're set for life.
Honestly, that sounds like the more reasonable one.
We'll have to film it for the YouTube channel. We'll also have to make a YouTube channel first, but
Let me know when you do, because I need to do that too.
Yeah, it's all right, Matt. We want to go ahead and move on. You said you have something shocking that you want to bring to us. What's going on with that?
This happened moments ago, and I'm still like I'm shook up. So I walk into my house. I just got off work. I'm like defrocking myself from my work clothes, and my wife says, you have to see this. So one of her current favorite things is organizing videos. That's her internet joy milieu, is like clean your house, 10,000 like 10 great hacks for cleaning your stuff, and everybody's got to be somewhere. So that's her thing. She's like, you got to see this lady. So she pulls me over to like this mom personality who's like, this is the ultimate hack for organizing your board games. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And so then she proceeds to take a board game, dump its entire contents into a clear mesh bag, take the instructions, throw it in, zip it up, crumble the box up, and throw the box away. And I'm screaming, no! What is she doing? And then she put the games into a file, like an office file, so that you can rifle through and find the game you want and pull it out. And she's like, isn't that cool and neat? And then when you're done, you just toss it back in the bag. And I was like, this woman has committed a crime against all of board games. And I'm not even going to give her handle around because she doesn't need big board game social media like coming down on her like an avalanche. But it was shocking. As fellow board gamers, I can see your faces, and I know that this is just an upsetting thing to hear that people are doing this.
I wish I had the words for the physical sensations that I just experienced and went throughout that story.
That is, so I actually have a good story for this, because
Okay.
the second you started talking about it, I was like, oh my god, I've experienced this travesty before. It was one of the first TikToks I've ever made. It was like 2.5 years ago, and I remember seeing a very similar video where there's like a mom blogger was like, 10 board game hacks, and I was like, all right, lay them on me, I want to see this. She started cutting up the cover of the box to use as the label in the bag.
Yes.
And I did a reaction video to it, because I was just like, what the hell are you doing? And same thing, dumped it all in the bag, cut up the box, threw it in the Ziploc bag, and put it in like a Tupperware container underneath the bed. And I was like, she's like, I can fit 50 in here. And I was like, or you could not. You could
or you could not do that.
The Tupperware just adds an extra level to the whole thing.
Oh,
like, yes,
it was
Tupperware. Genius.
My wife was like, she was like, I knew you would hate this. And I was like, if you knew, like, not only just displaying your boxes, like, such a big part of like board game culture that like shelfies are a thing. Like, you take a picture of like how you've got your stuff arranged. But also like organizing board games is such a thing that there are aftermarket organizers that cost more than the game. And I was like, and of course that like my wife fell out at that. She's like, people don't buy that. And I was like, Dennis, our friend Dennis bought one, has bought multiple. hundreds of dollars.
So many organizers.
Kinda-
So
I'm
many
just
organizers.
surely it is more complicated. I'm just trying to imagine like Gloomhaven or something, right? Just
Well,
imagine, or like imagine Twilight Imperium, and everything's in one
Okay, but
bag,
here's the thing with
and you
Gloomhaven.
have to
It's
organize everything. You have to pick out each piece. I would.
But Gloomhaven is already the size of a Rubbermaid tub, so you're not making it any
Yeah.
smaller. Just, I mean,
sure. No, this is. I mean, to be fair, these were like Monopoly. This was like a game you dump out and play. This was not real
It
games.
wasn't real board games.
It wasn't real board games. It wasn't real board games, says man drinking a Yingling.
The best of the worst.
So anyway, that was my soapbox. I'm coming down off that now. Thank you for letting me vent.
Wow. So we definitely have to have a bit of a palate cleanser after that before we move on to our main discussion. So we're actually going to jump into some bitter board gamers. Of course, this is the game where I'm going to read some 1-star reviews, and you guys are going to guess what game am I talking about. All right, are you guys ready?
absolutely.
I can't wait for this. I'm very excited.
All right, we're going to jump into our first review. An interesting idea. Promised a lot, but the combat system is horrible. The illustrations look like they were done by a teenager. You could forgive them if the game was worth playing. Disappointing.
Wait.
Bad combat. Bad
Bad
art.
combat, bad art. Could be a lot of the games that I love, honestly. I'm looking around. I mean, it could be, any number of games that I would defend.
Very, very much a Matt description.
Although I'm a big fan of bad art, I find it endearing sometimes. It just adds on to the flavor of the game.
It does, doesn't it? All right, that's definitely a tough one. I'm going to give you guys a second one just to fill it in a little bit. All the fun of Puerto Rico, but with significantly less depth. At least it's over in 20 to 30 minutes, though it's not getting any extra points just because the torture ends sooner.
20 minutes. Puerto Rico.
Such a bad review.
I am having an impossible time bridging
Puerto Rico
combat,
combat
to Puerto Rico. Like,
So it has like the Puerto Rico like you can
Vibe.
pick an action on your opponent's turn thing. Maybe is that like what we're talking about? Bad art. Is it a Gamelin game? They have weird art sometimes. Tiny Epic Kingdoms has terrible art. It's Tiny Epic Kingdoms.
It's Tiny Epic Kingdoms!
Yes!
Wow!
I did it.
That was brilliant. You
Damn.
zeroed on that.
Tiny Epic Kingdoms has the craziest like an earnest middle schoolers like who's into D&D. That sounds terrible. I hope the artist of this doesn't look, but it's very a mixed bag.
who is finishing Tiny Epic Kingdoms in 20 minutes? I mean, it's not the longest
don't
game,
know.
but like, dang.
I like Tiny Epic Kingdoms.
Put it on my list of games to play. Or not play, I guess, according to these reviews.
It's not that bad. It does have weird art.
Yeah, I do actually have a question for you guys before we move on to our next one, because one of the other reviews that I saw, it says, you know what I love? Games that list that they work with 2 players, but really don't. I love wasting money on games that falsely advertise that they work with 2. Have any of you guys played Tiny Epic Kingdoms with 2 people, and does it work?
It does not.
I looked at the 2-player rules and made that decision without having played it. I was like, oh, so this is one of those games. And then put it in the 3+ area of the shelves.
Yeah, I was going to mention it during the show or during the main part of the discussion, and now I don't have to. But yeah, it's one of those fake me outs. Or it's like 2 to, I think it plays up relatively high, like 2 to 6. It's like a good game for like a big group. But 2's a fake me out because you have to use an AI third player. It just isn't really built for 2. And there's a lot of games that do that where it's like it's for 2 players, but also only use like this corner of the board and like a quarter of the resources. I'm like, get out of here with that. It's not a get out of here. I don't want to play like a quarter of the game.
Man, well, it sounds like at least one of these negative reviews was saying something actually true.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our second game. Your first review. I despise this. People tell me it's about table banter, but that just devolves into shouting at each other since no one at the table is in possession of any concrete information. End result, random guess and selection. Awful.
That's so many. That's coming through.
Right? I'm like, obvious first guess, werewolf?
Yeah,
Deception?
it is One Night Ultimate Werewolf.
Yeah.
Hard disagree. Yeah. You get, I mean, not the most information, but certainly more than like base game werewolf, where it's just like, who's the first person to talk? Well, they're dead.
Well, also, I feel like those games, like, you're not working with a bunch of information in general. It's not like you're given really anything. Like, how can you be angry at that? You know that's what's happening when you're going into that game.
Also, Ian, how dare you? You know my feelings on social deduction games.
Yes, I knew you would be upset by this. Before we finish up, there's a review that I had to read. The guy got so mad he opened his thesaurus on us. I utterly despise this game and its clonal progeny. Not that I would want to play it ever, but I have seen it played more than enough to make my opinion. It is a game that phagocytes an entire group of players and a room, overpowering the smell like toilet cleaner. It destroys all possibilities to play any other game in the same room, so disruptive it is, and can even hijack players engaged in other games. Don't ever ask me to play that, unless you want to see a werewolf in action.
Ian, I don't know that
What?
you're allowed to say all those words on this podcast.
Yeah. First of all, I'm proud of that review, and I'm glad that I wrote it. I stand by it. I'm Googling the word phagocyte right now.
He definitely right-clicked, like, similar to...
Suggest.
that. And then flexed at the end, like, yeah, I'm big, strong daddy.
Big strong man.
I'm mad. There's not even a verb form of. You can't use phagocyte like that.
You can't use phagocyte as a verb. It actually doesn't make any sense. I don't know what he was trying to say. None of it makes any sense.
A type of cell within the body capable of engulfing and absorbing bacteria.
I think that's what he was getting at. Is it like engulfs the entire room? But I don't know.
Now you know.
Anyways,
and knowing is half the battle.
Anyways, you always hate seeing people that missed it, but sometimes it is just too fun not to get into. We, of course, are going to move on to our main topic, talk about some two-player games, so we'll be right back in just a second.
Today's episode of the Dice Pirates is brought to you by Board Game Organizers. Dump your board games into a bag. Toss them under your bed. All these boxes taking up space, just toss them under your bed in a bag.
Sponsored by Ziploc.
Buy them in bulk on Amazon.
I don't know. I bet I could make like board game bags with like a Z, a thing. Board game bags.
Just use like plastic grocery bags from the market to save them because you know you have a bunch underneath your sink.
The new board game shelfie would just be piles of old Walmart bags full of games.
Just Sharpie on the bag.
It just looks like a homeless man's
Yeah.
area.
All right, and welcome back to the Dice Pirates, and we're going to go ahead and jump into our main topic, which this week we're going to be taking a look at two-player games. This is actually a little bit of a spinoff from a sidetrack, a rant in our last episode where we talked about how a lot of games boldly proclaim that they are 2 to 4, 2 to 6 players, but not every game really plays well at 2 players. It takes a kind of a special game to feel just as fulfilling with 2 as it does with a larger group. So we wanted to kind of dig into that topic a little bit, and we are thrilled to have Dani here with us to break the topic down. So I'll just toss to you. What do you look for in a good 2-player game? What makes a game good for 2?
I want something that, I guess, respects my time. So I'm a big fan of like synchronous play, but I also appreciate that more with more players. So a game like Space is very quick with a big group of people, but that game might also probably not play at a 2-player count because, well, there's more variability, there's more excitement when you have more people. It's the same with like Nidavellir, and I botch the name of that game all the time. Love that game. It's such a good time, and it respects your time. But again, I don't think I would play it at 2 players because the interaction with players, with more players is just more fun. So I want something that respects my time in that sense, but also it doesn't alter how the game is played with 2 players. So I'm not looking to bring in an AI to like fill in the blanks for the lack of players. Like we were talking earlier, I'm not looking to only use a quarter of the game because we're at 2 players. So I want like the full experience of the game, but at only a 2-player count. However, I do have an exception to that rule, and that is Ankh, where there's a different experience in that game. So that is a dudes on a map territory control style game. And I prefer it at a 2-player count.
Really?
However, when it's more than 2 players, it brings in this mechanic where you get to merge players, and it's a completely different play style. And that actually playstyle is totally not for me. So I prefer at a 2-player count. But for the most part, I want to still be able to get the same experience at a 2-player count, then a 3, then a 4, and a 4. And I want to respect my time. And also, I also like games where I can just sit down and not speak.
Yeah.
Where it's just me and my husband, and we're not talking. And by the end of the game, it's like 2 hours in, and you're like, all right, so what'd you do? How'd that go? Let's count up points. That's great.
What'd you build over there?
Yeah, what's good? How's your engine going?
Yeah.
I actually really like that because as I'm thinking about the games that my wife and I play together, they do often tend to fall like kind of in the same vein where unless we're playing something like Above and Below or Near and Far where reading and interacting with each other is part of it, a lot of the games we tend to play are just very like quiet. We'll play some Calico, we'll play some Tiny Towns, like games that just let you sort of zone in on what you're doing and just really focus on one thing, and then at the end you're like, hey, this is what I did. Look at it, it's pretty.
Let me show
You
you.
know?
I appreciate that because at the end of the day, like if I'm sitting down and playing a game, which for the most part is going to be a 2-player count, I want that kind of like relaxing nature where it doesn't require like a ton of interaction back and forth, like verbally, or we're not at each other's throats trying to like kill each other.
Yeah.
Like in a deck builder, like that's a game where you just like you're at each other's throats.
Yeah.
For the games where there's a lot of interaction, I want to do it with more people. Like I want to have those conversations and I want to have the fun. So like Terraforming Mars, for example, that's a game we can sit down for 3 hours and not speak the whole time. Like I won't even question it. Obviously, we're not going to cheat. We are respectful of each other. But at the end of that, like, so how many points you got? Cool.
Yeah.
You built a lot of oceans. Cool.
That's funny because you mentioned Terraforming Mars because one of the games that I was going to bring up as a game that I think is pretty good 2 players is actually the Ares Expedition version of Terraforming Mars, which is the little bit more streamlined version of the game that plays around with that Puerto Rico-like mechanic again of being able to take an action on your opponent's turn. You both declare an action and you can potentially do 2 different actions. It I don't know if everyone would agree that it scales down super well to 2 because that core thing of like everyone picks an action they're going to do on the turn in a 2-player game, it definitely increases the chance that you're both going to pick the same action, which kind of makes like a bummer round. So I can 100% see where some people don't like this game at 2. But I liked it at 2 because of what you just described. It does have that chill like, ooh, I'm building a nice little tableau. Look, I've made bacteria, and look, I'm bringing down a meteor onto the planet. So you're just kind of doing your thing, and then occasionally checking in with your opponent, and then it's all over. So I thought that one was pretty fun. That's a recent 2-player experience that I enjoyed.
I've yet to bring that to the table, and I really want to. We've read the rule book several times. We brought it on vacation, and we haven't played it yet. But that's good to hear because I also like Race for the Galaxy at 2 players, and it's the same thing. Like you're picking the actions, and there you can have a bummer round, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it, and I think I've played it with more players, and I'm just like, sure, whatever, like it's fine. But it's definitely in my 2-player wheelhouse.
Yeah, if you like Race, you'll like Ares. Race is a better comparison point than Puerto Rico, actually. I don't know why I completely blanked on that. I had Puerto Rico on the brain because I just mentioned it. But it's the Race for the Galaxy meets Terra Mystica hybrid, and it's fun, and it does work at 2. It's funky at like 3 or 4 because there is more going on. It doesn't necessarily feel cutthroat. It's not a really player interaction game, but it is busier, and it gets more zen and chill at 2. Which I think that's what I'm looking for. I was thinking about what I want in a 2-player experience. I don't love 2-player games where there's a lot of take that. Because it's just you and another person, and you're just like, sorry, dude. Bam! I've killed your things. Or like, I'm sorry, I've just completely invalidated your turn. Or like, that's not always a great vibe. I mean, it depends on who you're playing with. Sometimes it is. But I like buildy, engine-y games more with 2 people.
Yeah, take that, especially in 2-player games. It feels a lot more personal, even though it's like, well, you're the only other. You are the only one who can take that. So
yeah.
But for some reason, I think it's just the dynamic of it's you and one other person. You don't. It's harder to separate it from your relationship beyond the game. So it's like, oh, so that's what we're doing tonight. You sleeping on the couch tonight? Like
that's we kind of have like a house rule when it comes time when we play 2-player games, and like especially when you play like a heavy Euro game and there's a random mechanic thrown in to just kind of screw with another person, like it just feels it feels bad. I don't want to feel bad where you spend all this time to like build up what you're doing, you're strategizing, you're really like putting a lot of love into it, and there's like one card that can completely make that person crumble. And we kind of have like Scythe is a good example of that. Not necessarily a card, but we kind of have a rule where we don't attack each other. Like, let us just go build our engines, get our mechs out, let us like go and control our territories, and you're gonna stay on one side of the map and I'm gonna stay over here, and we're gonna leave each other alone. And you know it's gonna get spicy afterwards if one of us attacks. Like, it doesn't end well. It doesn't. So I'm not a big fan of that in 2-player games, where it's just like the one little thing in a game where it's just like, really, you did that? Like, why? I don't want it.
There's definitely a lot of stuff that you do specifically want, like within 2-player games, that's just changed. And so I kind of want to start moving into some of the specific games that we wanted to talk about, because I know, Aaron, you actually had a game that you want to talk about that had something I would have brought up as something you don't do in a
Yes.
2-player game, is like social deduction, because I feel like something like that, like a lot of those things where you're, the guessing normally seems like something you'd have with more people. So I'm curious as to how that works and why that makes a good 2-player game.
So as has certainly been brought up, I'm a fan of weird games. I'm a fan of games that really try and do something and swing for the fences, even if they don't always land. And the elevator pitch for this game, I was like, well, okay, I need to get that, because, as you said, it is a social deduction game, and it's not a social deduction game that you can play with two. It is a 2-player social deduction game called Inhuman Conditions, from the same people that brought us Cards Against Humanity. Please don't tune off. Please stay listening. I promise.
I'm out.
I promise. So Inhuman Conditions is set in a universe that is similar to but legally distinct from Blade Runner, where one person is the investigator and the other person is either a human or a robot. And there are a lot of like tests and things that you go through where the investigator will ask the suspect questions based around a theme. And if they're a human, all they have to do is get through the entire 3-minute questioning, 3 minutes or 5 minutes of questioning, and not have the investigator say, I'm pretty sure you're a robot, and then push the button that kills them. If you're a robot, you have a lot more restrictions on the things that you are and are not allowed to say. You also have, if you violate one of your rules, there's a penalty that is agreed on and established before the game starts. And part of what I really like about this game is it is very, very much into itself. It's very much into its own universe. When you sit down at the table, the box, it's this really long, kind of like a card shoe for Magic the Gathering. It's this really long box, magnetic leaf that unfolds, and there's a spot where the investigator they have this little notepad that they write on, where they put, like, what's your name, what's your occupation, do I think you're a robot, what set of questions are we using, and there's a little spot for that. And then you have 2 little rubber ink stamps, one that says human and one that says robot, and there's like 2 little spots for those. And when you're going through the rulebook, it gives you almost a script of, thank you for sitting with me, this will be your final interview to determine your innocence. And it really leads you through building into, because the game itself is 3 minutes, so it really helps both players get very into the spirit of the game and really get into the magic circle of it all, which I'm a big fan of games that appreciate the fact that they are games, that it's a silly thing that we all do. We all sit around a table and play cops and robbers for a while, and it really embraces that, and I love that so much about it. And there's even a very small little box at the bottom of the notepad where if I say that you're a robot and then it turns out that you were actually a human, I have this little box where I can write a condolence letter to your family apologizing for killing you.
That's a great little touch.
But yeah,
You sold me on the
it
game.
works so wonderfully. It's great when you have a group of people, because everyone wants to sit around and watch, especially if everyone either does or does not know if the person's a robot. I think it works better if no one knows except for the suspect and everyone's just sitting behind the investigator like,
I was thinking that
is it a robot?
when you were describing it, I was like, I want to watch two people play this. I want to watch
It's a
Yeah,
spectator
yeah,
sport.
I want to watch a YouTube series of people playing this. It sounds funny.
It's I really love it. I think it sounds fun based on what I described. I also think I did a bad job describing it.
No,
No, you
you
did
did
a
a
good
good job.
Yeah, it's the Voight
there's
contest from
so
Blade
much
Runner.
happening.
They made a whole game around the Voight contest. Like, are you a robot?
The form that you fill out is the like VK82.
Yeah.
Like whatever year the movie came out, it's like the form is named that because they're like, yeah, we know.
We know.
Yeah.
I do love this as a small subgenre in board gaming of like, hey, this is based on a movie that we were not going to get a rights to. So this and like, what's the Dinosaur Island, and I feel like there's others, or Dead of Winter, which is The Walking Dead, but not. So it's like, hey, we weren't even going to attempt to get the rights to the thing, but you know what it is.
And then just a honorable mention, and I'll throw it back out. There's another. It's a 2-player game, but it's another game where 2 people are playing, but the rest of the room is watching because it's really engaging to watch. And that is a game that came out a few years ago called Fog of Love. And it's more of a role-playing game than a board game. I mean, it does have rules and there's victory conditions, but it's basically a role-playing game where both people are in a relationship of some sort, and you actually determine what kind, where are you in the relationship? Have you guys just started dating? Have you been married for a couple years? Is maybe one person running around on the other person? Mm-hmm. And you have your personality traits where you are rewarded for answering certain responses certain ways. And this is another game where in the rule book, as you're going through it, it tells you, like, understand that you are playing a character. You are not playing you. And that the person that you're playing with is also playing a character. And they're not making the decisions that they would actually make in their real life. So please don't get mad at them later for this.
I love that.
There's thoughtful game designers for putting that in.
Yes. Because it is, like, I've played it a couple times. I've only ever played it once with my wife. I don't know what that says. But I've played it a couple times with other friends. And even like just loose friendships, there's a weird feeling that happens about halfway through the game of like, are you feeling this right now? Like, why did you say that to my mom? You love my mom. Where is this coming from? It's so good and it's so much fun to watch. Also, it has a very, very interesting, if you go to the Kickstarter and go to Board Game Geek, it has a really interesting development cycle that does end kind of tragically, where this guy wanted to design a game to play with his wife, and that was the whole inspiration. Was she didn't really like board games, but she liked romantic stuff and romantic comedies, so he wanted to design a board game around that. And then he actually got so into working on the game, they are actually no longer together, and that's kind of a bummer.
Oh, that's
but it's
tragic
a really
twist.
Good journey to follow. Like, it's a good story, and it's his obsession with this and then reconciling. It's I don't know.
That sort of ruined the game for me. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, I'll bring it back up. I heard some really good things about this game. I talk a lot about 2-player games because that is, everyone wants a 2-player game, and every time I always get a comment like, "Have you played Fog of Love yet?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't. I need to play this game. It is high on my wish list of games to play." And I love role playing. I love getting into character. I love that type of thing. So that game definitely would check a lot of boxes for me.
I think it's interesting that both of the games you picked, Aaron, are sort of more experiences than games in a traditional sense. And I love that because it really does kind of, like, getting together with like one other person to like play a game where there's a winner and a loser isn't necessarily like the dynamic that everybody wants. Maybe they're too competitive, but like having a really interesting, silly or dramatic time together can be really fun, especially if you're into stories or telling stories. So those are two really interesting choices. I mean, board games are more than just like run around the track and score victory points. There's a lot more to the hobby, so that's really cool.
It's definitely, and I know we talked about it being like kind of more quiet, like sort of almost meditative when you're playing with 2 people, but I think that's actually, because like you mentioned, Matt, it's a lot more intimate. You actually get to really focus like on the other person when you're playing. Just focus on that time that you don't get when you have, 3, 4, 5 people around. And so maybe that's why we also see that a lot of these two-player games are a lot quicker. I mean, obviously some are longer. You are going to play, longer games like Terraforming Mars, Scythe. You might play those games with two people, but a lot of the two-player games tend to be very quick. You can pick them up, you can get them out in like 20 to 30 minutes. And so I did want to ask you about actually Danny, about one of the games that I saw that was a little bit shorter there, which is Botanik. Because first off, the theme is awesome. I want to play this, but also I love that it's 20 minutes long. It doesn't even give like 20 to 30. It's 20 minutes. That's super fast. You can get it out, play it. It looks awesome.
It's become one of my favorite two-player games, and this game completely surprised me. It was sent to me randomly last year, and I definitely looked at it and I was like, okay, like sure, I'll play it, like I'll talk about it. And I actually brought it to Gen Con with us. I was like, oh, if I have time, like I'll pop it out and play it there. And we played it on the plane. We had it straddled in between two, like the trays, and it's a tile placement game where you draft the tiles from like the center market. And it isn't a direct draft though, it's an indirect draft. So when you place a tile, it's really hard to explain without seeing it. So you need to place and pick up tiles, and if it ever breaks a pattern within the market, then you receive a tile that goes into your tableau. So it's a lot more than just like taking it and putting it in their strategy. So you don't want to give your opponent something, or maybe you want to give them something because it's not going to fit well in their tableau. So the matter of drafting is where a lot of the strategy comes, and then you put it into your tableau where you're building this, like, not even sewer system because it's very pretty. It's a pipe system where there's plants and all of these organic things growing off of it. And the end game you score based off like your sections of colors and the plants coming off of it. It's very simple, it's very strategic, and it's very quick. And it shocked me. The art is very bizarre, but it's very pretty. And I think it's fantastic. It is so well. I haven't found a flaw in it yet. Like, that one's a little overpowered, or, sometimes you can find something in a game you're like, we're not going to play that card because it gets a little weird. I have yet to find that with this game. We take it everywhere. It is in my purse. It comes with me in the car. It's in my glove box on road trips. Like I said, you can play it on a plane if you get crafty with it. That game, it knocked out of the park for me. It was in the top 5 of games in general for me last year, and I think it will stay in my top 10 permanently. It was that good.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I'm looking at it now, and you're right. The art style is so distinctive and interesting. This looks great.
I think it's Space Cowboys. Is that who it is?
Let's look it up and
remember.
give them a shout out. It is.
I think it's the same people who published Splendor. And I could be misspoken. I feel like
It is Space Cowboys. You are correct.
Yeah.
Some
There you
people have
go.
called me a space cowboy.
Some people call me the
Wow.
gangster.
Wow.
I'm gonna call you that from now on, by the way.
You should.
That's it. That's all. That's it. You're the Space Cowboy. I'm pretty sure that was an NSYNC song too.
Perfect.
I got another game that I wanted to mention as kind of a I don't know if this is another one that's like I don't know if everyone would think it was a 2-player game, but I thought it worked really well and scaled down, which is Star Wars Outer Rim. And this is a fun one that is not so like buildy and botanical and chill. This is space whiz bang adventures, but it works really well. I thought at 2 because you have much less downtime. So in a 3 or 4 player game of Star Wars Outer Rim, which if you don't know what it is, it's basically Star Wars in a box. You zip around space, doing cool jobs and missions, fighting stuff, getting bounties, rolling dice, and having a big old time. It's really good. It's a bit on the random side and can be really disappointing when those cruel success dice don't actually roll in your favor. But if you like Star Wars, or if you just want a whiz-bang space adventure, really good. And it was particularly fun to play it after watching The Mandalorian, because it's got those same vibes, if you like The Mandalorian. But it worked really well in 2-player, because in a 3 or 4 game, each player's turn can be, I don't know, 10 minutes if they're trying to resolve a job where they're like, I gotta rob the bank on Naboo, and I gotta roll these dice and see what happens, and then maybe I'm gonna do here. And so it could be 15 minutes before it loops back around to you again, which is not the end of the world. I mean, especially if you're, having drinks and playing games with your friends. But at the same time, if you want it to be a little more punchy, or it's just back and forth, and you get your turn back, it felt pretty good. It totally takes the player interaction out of it for the most part, because you'll quickly end up on like opposite ends of the galaxy. And even though you might draw like a card that's like go to another place with a space with another player and like do this thing to like score some points or mess them up, or maybe even like you could do a bounty on your opponent if you want. It's like, do I want to fly over to most whatever, and like waste like 2 turns doing that? It's like, you're probably not. So it pretty quickly devolves into you just chasing your own objectives and doing your thing. But that's okay. It works really well that way. So I think that's a contender if you want something a little more actiony and Ameritrashy and for 2 players.
I'm going to completely agree with you. We played that recently, and I don't ever see us playing it with more than 2 people.
Yeah.
And I think for the reasons you described, like, it's the same reason why I never want to play On Mars with more than 2 people. Like, it would just take forever.
Oh.
But I do like the action. Outer Rim surprised me. Very much surprised me at how much I like that. And I think maybe because we were hot off the heels of The Mandalorian, and I was like, oh my god, all the characters are here, and I can do all these bounties and do all this fun stuff. And we definitely had Star Wars on the TV while we were playing. So I felt the vibes, but I would never play it with more than 2 people.
It was we've played it with 3, and it's okay. I would be freaked out to play with 4. I feel like that long like curve to get back to your turn after with 3 players would be a real bummer. But it was okay with 3, but I liked it a lot with 2. And I had a similar experience of like playing it while like watching Star Wars TV recently, and it's like I was introduced to the character of like Black Chrysanthemum in Star Wars Outer Rim, and then saw him on like the Boba Fett show like 2 days later, and I was like, this is a thing that I said out loud in a living room. It's like it's that guy from the board game. Because like I don't read like Star Wars extra media, and I'd never heard of Black Chrysanthemum, and I was like looking at my wife. I got a bounty on that guy, and I got him.
I got him. I turned him in.
I turned him in, and she's like, I don't know.
What's he doing here?
She's like, good for you. I'm so proud of you.
Mom, look, my action figure. He's on the TV.
It's the guy from the board game. So I did have a weird experience of like, it made me enjoy the show a little more. I don't know. Yeah, but that's a fun one. So I don't know. It's worth looking at.
I am curious because, Denny, I know you had a game that you mentioned that is actually a little more combative than I think a lot of the games we talked about earlier on. Like, obviously, in a lot of card games, you're going to be working against another person. But I'm curious about Rift Force, because it's specifically a 2-player duel card game. Of course, I mean, Magic the Gathering, most card games are, in a sense, dueling, card games. But I'm curious, so why this one? How does this one work for you, and why does that help a little more, as opposed to like some take that mechanics?
So why Rift Force slaps for me? There's very little hidden information. So when you're playing a deck builder, when you're playing Magic, you have a deck and you're like, okay, I'm playing against someone who's playing red white. I kind of have an idea how this is going to play, but exactly what they're going to play, I have no idea what to expect. So Rift Force is this the right term? Deck constructor? Like it comes with pre-made decks, and you form a deck with all the pre-made like factions.
Kind of like Smash Up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly like Smash Up.
Okay.
It is exactly like Smash Up. But even simpler, maybe? No. It's on a very much like adjacent level of Smash Up, but in a different way. So there's 8 factions, 10 factions, I lied. And you each draft 4. You meld a deck together. And you are playing on a rift. And there's 5 locations where you can play cards. Again, similar to Smash Up. But the cards are labeled 5, 6, 7. So 5 through 7. And each faction has 1 ability. And you know what those abilities are. So they're all out in front of you. Like I know when I'm playing against Todd, which 4 he has and which 4 I have. And it's a matter of where you place them and how they stack. So when you bring out, there's 3 things you can do. You can bring in cards. You can activate the cards. Or you can check for points and draw up. So when you bring in cards, you can only bring in 3. They either have to be the same faction or the same number. They come out on the locations, and they kind of act as like who's gonna, like they go in order of who's gonna take damage first. So if you're up front, they're gonna take the damage, and then it's gonna escalate backwards. When you activate, you just activate those guys' abilities. So whoever's out on those locations, you can only activate 3. They all have to be of the same faction or the same number. So looking at my board, she has 5 5s out. She's probably going to activate those 5s. What is she going to do with those? And it is as simple as that. So it's more strategy than the randomization or the lack of expectation. Like, you don't know where this is gonna go. You can prepare for the person's next step, and I think that's why I like it, because it has like the strategy of like a Euro game, but also has like the feel of like a trading card game or a deck builder. So it's a good blend of the two. And some games can play really quick depending on the factions that you put together, and some can get like very lengthy because there's a healer and there's tanks, and they all have different things. So just depending on how you build your deck will determine like the length. And by length, I mean either like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Like, there's nothing more than that. That is a good brewery game for us. We've been hitting that game hard recently. Packs up into a nice little box. It sits well on a picnic table, and you can like get your rift aligned perfectly on like the center wood plank of a picnic table. It is like primetime brewery board game for us. So Rift Force is fun. I think it came out last year.
Yeah, looks like it
But
did.
I can't recommend that one enough, especially for people who like card games but are looking for simplicity. And yeah, I'd never made the Smash Up connection. I can't believe I never made that Smash Up connection.
Oh, this looks awesome. This looks right up my alley. It's got really cool fantasy epic themed art, and you're right. It's a relatively compact little game that you could take with you.
And I think why. So I got beef with Smash Up. I think because I played it too much. I got beef. It has that element where you work really hard to build something up, and someone can very quickly say F you and make it all go away. Like, there's none of that in Rift Force, or there is, and you can plan for it. You can see it coming. There's no surprise. Yeah, that's what it is. There's no surprise as to what's coming.
Yeah, making sure that nobody feels bad like during the game. I think it's like a big part of it. Because I mean, you know, this is why I want to talk about my next 2-player game, Monopoly, which I think is great for.
Insert the Skype disconnect sound here.
No, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like making sure that everything you do and the whole what you're leading up to doesn't feel like it gets crushed in a second is a big part of making sure you can enjoy the game with 2 people, especially if you want to play it a lot. And I like that it's so short that you can really get like a lot of playthroughs in, or like break it out with maybe other games if you want to make it a longer evening.
Are we being serious about Monopoly?
No,
that was
definitely not.
Oh, I was like, wow.
No.
We are.
Danny said, wrong podcast.
Full spectrum. I was here to listen to it. I want to hear the arguments for Monopoly. Like, sure.
You've seen, you've watched How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's very similar.
How to Lose a Friend. Make them play Monopoly with you.
Yeah, I can't imagine that game.
We've been talking about doing a show. Let's tease it on the air so that we'll have to actually do this. We've been talking about doing a show where we play maligned old games and see, like, are they really as bad? Like, when's the last time you honestly played Monopoly? So maybe we'll play Monopoly and Clue and Risk and just see. But then every time I think about actually playing Monopoly, Clue, and Risk, I get like palpable sense of terror. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
I played Guess Who recently.
Guess Who?
I had a really good time.
Yeah, I was gonna Guess Who. Guess Who slaps though. Like,
That's a good one.
I had
fun
a
memories
really
of
good
that game.
time playing.
I think the beauty of Guess Who is that there's not rules getting in the way of what is a very simple thing.
That's true.
Yeah, that's very.
There's only like
very accurate.
You just do like, are you a guy or are you a girl? That eliminates half. Do you have glasses? That's like another third. Do you have a beard? And then it's like that one guy Cornelius, who's like bald with like the chin beard.
No, see,
You can, like,
you're
gamble.
Cornelius.
And you can gamble big on the blue eyes, green eyes one, but if you get it wrong and you waste a guess,
Yeah,
the correct way to play Guess Who, and this is a game that Simon published a few years ago called Unusual Suspects, is you do not ask what color are their eyes. You ask,
do they have eyes?
Do they tip well?
What?
Does your person vote Republican?
Ooh.
So this is a trend right now on TikTok, and I don't know if it's a trend or some weird side of TikTok I fell on, but people are recording themselves playing Guess Who in that respect. Like,
yes.
Does your person look like they would have played baseball in high school and then drank Bud Lights in college? And like, you see the person like flick, 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 flick. Nope.
Yep, nope.
Get rid of I was dying watching this most recent one because the person nailed it. Whether it was scripted or not, it was still funny as hell. It was good.
That actually sounds amazing.
I want to play Guess Who that way now. Talking about all these classic games makes me realize we're forgetting the greatest 2-player board game that was ever made. You'll get caught up in it. The Crossfire.
Played that recently.
I mean, come
girl
on.
in high school that had a copy of it.
I had a copy
and
of
I
it.
will.
Oh.
I'd be lying if I said that relationship maybe didn't last a week or two longer than it absolutely needed
Just to keep coming over and play like
Based
Crossfire.
purely on the fact that she had Crossfire, and I was like, I mean, she can't be that bad.
What a great game!
She's got Crossfire.
How does this game work? Kids shoot ball bearings at each other. Let's make that. Let's definitely make that game.
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong with that.
Oh, and they do it like one at a time? No,
do it
chain
a lot.
fire.
It's like
my fingers started to hurt playing that. Like I started getting like I had to like hold my wrist to do it. It was getting brutal, but it was fun. A 10 out of 10.
I got carpal tunnel playing Crossfire this weekend.
Sorry, guys.
The game I actually did want to talk about Calico briefly. I know I mentioned it earlier, but that's actually been the go-to 2-player game for me and my wife lately. Mostly just because, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, it's just such a chill and relaxing game. We love to put on the chill beats to study to playlist that throws on and just kind of vibe out a little bit while we build our quilts and get cats to go ahead and lay down on them and try to sew buttons in, and just speaking of games that really allow you to just kind of tune out for a little bit. Like that game more so, I mean, like obviously there's a lot of games where you build a beautiful looking thing like Azul and stuff like that, but that game more than most other games I've played is just a relaxing time. Like I've never felt stressed, even when your quilt is getting a little too crowded and things aren't really quite working out for you and you're about to mess everything out. It's still fun. Like it's still nice it still looks pretty. And that's big for me.
I mean, it's got a sleeping kitten on the cover of the box. How could that game not be chill?
So since you made that comparison to Azul, I know last week we were on the main show, we talked about Azul and how it is an entirely different game at 2 players than it is with more people. Have you played Calico with more people? Does it have that same sort of feeling where it could almost be packaged as its own separate game because it is so different?
So actually, I would not really, because the only difference within the way that you interact with other people in that game is there's a pool of tokens out in the middle. Actually, in some way, it's actually better with more people, because when you're playing with 2 people, oftentimes you'll go for a similar strategy, and so there'll be 2 tokens out of the 3 that nobody wants, and so you're working off of 1 at that point, because I don't want that one. You take that one, and so actually with more people, there's more chances that things get taken away. So, but it's still, that's not to say it doesn't work at 2 people, but I think that it absolutely is not worse in any way at more people, and I think it works just as well.
I get that game mixed up with Calico, and so that's what I had in my mind the whole time. Not Calico, I'm sorry, Isle of Cats. And that's what I had in my mind.
Yes.
And Isle of Cats creeps me out with its long, weird, long twisty cats. I've never played it, but it's on Board Game Instagram, and I see people posting about it, and I was like, I don't like that game with these long cats. I just wanted to say that. I had nothing else to add to the discussion.
No, Matt hates long cats.
They're weird, man.
You heard it here first. I don't like
wow.
long cats.
Man. So obviously, I mean, there's a ton of 2-player games. We could keep coming up with more, but I do want to jump into the last game that you brought for us today, Dani, which is, I believe, Lost Cities.
Oh, this is our tried and true. This is one we had to buy a new copy. That's how much we played this. It was one of our first games we bought. Well, no, I take that back. It was in the early days. So it is a 2-player specific game, and I like to call it Battle or Dueling Spider Solitaire. And so there are 5 different colors, and the new version has a 6th different color. And you are trying to build, exactly like in Solitaire, a run from very bottom to up to 10. And there's 1 of each. There's no duplicates. And your goal for each color, once you start it, you need to hit a threshold of 20 points. So you would add up your numbers, and you need to make it to 20. If you don't make it to 20, you get minus points for whatever the difference is between that and 20. And then if you do make it to 20, you get positive points for whatever you exceed in 20. So that is 20 is the baseline 0. But there's other elements where you can kind of double down on things and add multipliers before you start the run. They look like little like poundy fists, like you're you're giving someone like a pound it. So you need to play that in anticipation that you are going to hit that 20 threshold, and it does the same thing for doubling points, anything beyond 20, that it will double negative points. So if you don't hit that threshold with the multiplier, you kind of shot yourself in the foot. So it's back and forth. You draw a card or you play a card from your hand. You can place cards in the center as a discard, which will allow the opponent to take it. So you're like, I don't have a lot of blue. I do have a lot of these other colors in my hand. I'm going to get rid of this blue in hopes I'm going to pick up something I need. But that might give your opponent the opportunity to be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going into blue now. I'm picking this up and I'm going to put it down. So all like, no duplicates. So once you start seeing cards coming out, like you can kind of prepare for strategy, but it does start getting down to the wire where once the deck runs out, that's it. So you might have a handful of cards that you're like, I was going to put it down. And then like your opponent's like milling it. Like, no, I'm not letting this happen. So it's a good time. Like we will sit down and play like 5 rounds of it. It's our camping game. It's our vacation game. It is our late night. We had a long day game. It's the game for all times. That is our number one of the 2-player games.
I've recently started playing it on Board Game Arena.
Oh.
And with playing board games online, if it's like a 4-player game, you can count on at least one person being really shaky at it, so you have like a safety corner. But if you're playing a only 2-player game on the internet, you're playing it because you really like it and because you're really good at it. And I played 3 games on Board Game Arena over the course of a week, and I was like, I'm never going to play this game online again because they have made it not fun for me. Because I will end the game with like 8, and they end the game with like 400 or whatever, and I'm like, what did I do?
The spiciest online. Lost City games. Yeah, Splendor on Board Game Arena is just disaster.
But it's the best because you got the little eyeball, so you don't have to do math.
No, but these
it
people...
just shows you, can I buy this card?
People are savage.
They are savage.
I am not down with whatever clown is happening with Splendor Online because shit's too much for me.
Can we back up for
Splendor.
A second to where Aaron was talking about how you have to do math to play Splendor? Like,
yeah, because you got like, okay, so I've got 2 red cards and then 1 red gem, and that needs those red gems and then the white gems and the green gems.
Sounds
and
like math to
look
me.
At the thing,
Man,
and I constantly have to like look up and down at what I have
addition.
and what's on the table. Okay.
Yeah, which is the math.
Still math.
Which is
okay.
100%
so,
math.
If I don't want to do math in my free time, I have that right.
Counting?
Ian, this is America. I have that right.
Yeah.
Gosh.
But yeah, no, it just has a little button that I can click the eyeball, and
Like
then I can just see the cards. Because with Splendor, with a lot of engine building games like that, I will fixate on working toward a thing, and that lets me see all of the things that I can achieve right now, versus I get stuck on a thing, and then right when I finally have enough to get it, Dani buys that card, and then I just have no plan moving forward. She's ruined everything for me. My life is in shambles.
Is Splendor fun with 2 players? I don't know if I've ever played Splendor with 2 players.
I've played it a lot at 2-player.
Is it fun? Is it good?
That's another game I need another copy of.
Yeah, you wore it out.
Disagree.
Yeah, but you have weird feelings about Splendor. The math's too deep for you. It's too complex.
I love that's where that went.
Oh, yeah. No, I Splendor's great. I would love to play it online actually more. You're just mad.
You're one of those folks, aren't you? You're an online Splendorer.
Matt, you're just mad because you're bad at it. You know.
I am very bad at it. I thought I was good, but I'm not. I have a question for the group. This is a bit of an audible from the agenda, but it's something I thought about because everyone here plays D&D, and I had a fascinating thing recently where I was introducing D&D to my son and stepson, and we were playing with the cool new Dungeons & Dragons Essentials kit, and it has rules in there for playing with 2 players, and that blew my mind, and I could not even imagine playing D&D as like a 2-player game, but they've adapted it, and I wanted to kind of, since everyone here has some experience with D&D, one, have you played D&D as a 2-player game, or would you? It feels weird, right?
Yeah, like I'm trying to conceptualize it in my head, and it just because the whole thing is about the different personalities
Right.
clashing at and like I feel like 2-player D&D would feel a lot more adversarial.
You would have to have like a dynamic with the person you're playing with, whether it's like a partner or just a really close friend that is very comfortable, like telling stories and just riffing and like I don't know. I think two people who are like very creative could have a blast with that, but it could be deeply awkward for about 90% of the population. They've essentially
So,
tried. I don't know.
so
No, go
actually,
ahead.
this is interesting because somebody I know, he actually does run a two-player D&D game. He DMs a world that he is running for his wife. And actually, if anybody listening is interested, they do actually turn into a podcast because, of course, two people running
Sure.
a D&D game. It actually works really well. It's called The Bountiful Bards. Uh, and it's the Fountains of Calreda is the world he's doing. So it's interesting. It's pretty fun, and I think like you said, like if it's two creative people, he also is an author. He's writing books, and
Mm-hmm.
so he's an author, and so he loves world building. And so I think if you do have, where even if one person is super creative and super interested in creating a world for the other person, that could actually be a really fascinating way to have some quality time where one person can get all their creative juices out, and the other person gets to just reap the benefit of that. I think that's actually a really cool dynamic.
I when you put it that way, I was just picturing me playing it alone with my husband, who hates the role playing aspect of it.
Just wants to,
Where
yeah.
he's the person
Oh
that's
yeah,
like,
no, that would
"Where's
be
the dragon I can chop?" And then there's me, who is like the most elaborate, like storytelling. I just want to role play everything and talk to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would never work. But if I were to have someone to like match my end of it,
Yeah.
I could get down with that. I think I could. I don't think I'd want to. I think I probably just want to play a board game or something.
Yeah.
But it could
I
happen.
mean, I realize I'm being incredibly reductive here, but 2-player D&D just feels like competitive bedtime stories.
The one-uppers.
Competitive
One-uppers unite.
bedtime stories. And then this happened. And then this happened.
And
Yeah.
then-
I don't know. I think everybody's got to be somewhere. I thought it was a really cool like idea that they would even put it in there. And one of the things I do, this is a wild tangent, but one of the things I love about D&D is that it's basically a framework around which you can hang almost anything. It's like here's just some crazy rules, and it's like if you wanted to just play like a war game out of this and put some miniatures down and fight stuff, you could do that. Or you could just do improv theater troupe around the same exact game experience, or it could just be two people telling each other a lovely story. D&D is an incredibly malleable thing. It's fascinating.
I definitely hope that we can actually do this again at some point and have you maybe for another two-player episode in the future, because the more that we talk about it, the more I realize there's almost no end to the games that we can bring up and the places you can go, because there is, I mean, one-on-one is such a different dynamic. So of course, we do have to bring it to an end at some point, but hopefully, I think we had a lot of games that we were able to talk about, and hopefully if you're interested at all in picking up a two-player game, maybe you can find something from what we've talked about. All right, and that is our episode. Thanks once again to Dani for jumping on. It was a pleasure to have you. So just real quick, you can go ahead and plug yourself. Let us know where we can find you if people want to follow you, or what else is going on with you. What's new?
Sure. So you can find me anywhere on the internet. Mostly TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, eventually YouTube, in that order, preferably. At Dani_Standring. I just love to talk about board games in a serious manner and a not so serious manner. Pick your poison. I'm there for all of it. And what I have coming up, preparing to go to PAX, PAX East. That is mid-April. Super excited for that. Hopefully, I've got some things in the works where I'm going to be supporting a lot of small publishers and some small designers. There's going to be kind of in air quotes, indie mega booth for board games, and hopefully I'm going to get, a lot of information out to the public on these cool games that are going to be there. So that's kind of my big endeavor that's coming up for the month of April.
That sounds really awesome. Remember to go check her stuff out. Genuinely amazing. Some absolutely hilarious videos as well, too. Just amazing stuff. Of course, if you did enjoy the podcast, do consider giving us a like, maybe subscribe, or tell somebody about us. And maybe you could even reach out. Let us know what you're thinking. What are some two-player games that you personally enjoy? Matt, if people want to reach out, where can they do so?
Well, they can find us on the Instagram. We are at Dice Pirates. We do more than podcasts. We're there all week long, reviewing games, posting about what we're doing, having a good time, and we want to hear from you. So if you send us a message or a comment, I promise we'll talk to you, and we'll even be nice.
Stay tuned for more episodes, of course. Will we ever muster up the courage to play Monopoly? We'll just stay tuned and see.
Probably
So,
not.
but until then, we'll be right here on the Dice Pirates.
Play more games.